I read comic books and I was the hero of the comic book. I saw movies and I was the hero in the movie. So every dream that I ever dreamed has come true 100 times.
Just the king of rock and roll, king of rock and roll.
Baby, baby, baby. Baby, baby, baby.
Oh my God, oh my God.
Yeah, baby.
The best 2 hours of Elvis.
Blue Suede Connection. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So right now, moms and dads are terrified at home when they turn on CBS and see this young man with long hair and sideburns jumping around and singing this wild music. Mm-hmm. And Tommy and Susie are just loving every minute of it.
Right, yeah.
So, you know, that this is the beginning, folks. This is the year 1956. This is when Elvis took the scene there, and he did it in many ways, just in his recordings alone, the way he looked, the way he dressed, the way everything. He was just totally different.
He was something new.
And the world and the country focused in on this young hillbilly cat from Memphis, Tennessee. And 56 was a busy year for him, right, babe? And you're going to share some things with us right now that was going on with him in that year.
Exactly. And before we get to January 56, it's worth commenting that December of 55, that RCA had re-released all of Elvis's The Five Sun singles.
Oh, yeah.
With Mystery Train just before they took him over in January. So I think that's worth saying there.
You'll hear some of those songs today on the show because they did re-release them, so they're officially 1956 recordings.
Right, yeah, because they were re-released. But in January of 56, Elvis spends the first week of the new year playing small towns with Carl Perkins and Johnny Cash.
Oh, I'd like to see that tour.
Yeah, they were all really good friends.
Right.
Yeah, in January 10th, Elvis has his first recording session at the RCA studio in Nashville where he records Heartbreak Hotel. Mm-hmm. In January 27th, RCA released Heartbreak Hotel, and I Was the One.
Okay.
January 28th, Elvis makes his national television debut on the Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey Show, which we just played a clip from. In January 30th, at his second session at RCA, Elvis records Blue Suede Shoes.
By Elvis doing Tutti Frutti, it kind of opened up the door to a very segregated world at that time.
Right, for black artists.
Yeah, and we're going to let Rufus Thomas kind of explain it more here in a minute, but it really did because Elvis was an innovator. Mm-hmm. And we've shared this many times on the show. In 1956, there were two worlds in music. There was the black or white music. And white kids were actually buying Little Richard records and stuff, but putting them in Pat Boone's sleeves so mom and dad didn't know what they were really listening to.
Right.
But I think Elvis played a part in allowing that to be a little bit more
And they
open.
were going to a lot of their concerts, too, but they would even segregate the crowd with a line down the middle, and the white kids would sit on one side and the black kids would sit on the other. Mm-hmm. And then the cops would freak out whenever they'd start dancing and intermix.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, no, can't have none of that.
Well, Rufus Thomas was a great Memphis blues artist, and he had a couple of national hits, and he knew Elvis. Mm-hmm. So let's hear what Rufus has to say about this whole thing.
Elvis came out with a style of his own, and it was very creative. And once he got into it and you got that feel, Elvis just took off like a late freight. And with Elvis doing this kind of music, gave an injection to black music that no other artist had ever done.
All right, we're rolling through 1956 today here on Blue Suede Connection. We're calling it the explosion. This is the year that Elvis ruled the charts and ruled the television, ruled the movie cinemas, and
everything, basically.
Everything was Elvis back in the day.
Was annoying all the parents.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know our boy loved to eat, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we have the HoustonPress.com. They put out the top 5 1950s foods. This is what you were having at the dinner table and at parties and things like that. And number 5 on their list, deviled eggs. That became a staple hors d'oeuvre at the backyard barbecues and cocktail parties across the United States. Mm-hmm. Number 4, baked Alaska, a.k.a., if you don't know what that is, a.k.a. ice cream and sponge cake encased in a toasted meringue on top of it. Although invented in the 19th century, the increased availability and affordability and reliable ovens of the 1950s made this a household favorite. Because those ovens were good, well, they can make baked Alaska now.
Okay.
Often Dad would get home from work, and Tommy and Cindy would get done their homework, and they'd sit around the table, and Mom would make tuna noodle casserole.
Ew, yuck.
One-dish meals were heavily marketed in the 1950s. Betty Crocker cashed in on that and made their dish popular. It called for Campbell's cream of mushroom soup and B&B mushrooms.
Do you like that?
It's okay. I do like this one, number 2, meatloaf. You got to add a slide of buttery, creamy mashed potatoes, a tall glass of milk, and you've got a quintessential 50s feast. The number one thing in the 1950s, lots of homes were doing this, and I guess busy moms love this one, the Swanson frozen dinners.
Yeah.
First introduced in 1954 during a live TV broadcast, these tidy dinners soon became America's favorite and fake home-cooked meal.
Fake.
Yes.
No doubt.
Most of the original varieties are still actually available today, and if you,
I'm sure they're not made like they were back then.
No.
Though.
The most popular, and still to this day, is the roast turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, and corn, and usually some little weird.
It tastes like somebody dropped a pound of salt in there.
Back in the day, that was a big discovery, man. Lots of things to talk about in 1956, like the average price of a new home. Can you imagine $11,700 for a brand new home?
I wish.
Now, I don't know what part of the United States this was in, but I bet everywhere we live in Winchester, Virginia, it was probably even less than that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's the average. The average monthly rent in 1956 was $88 a month.
Ooh.
Yearly wages back then were about $4,450 a year. The average price of gas then was 22 cents a gallon.
Nice.
Big events happening in 1956. Rex Harrison and Julie Andrews star in the Broadway premiere of My Fair Lady. The first TV serial, As the World Turns, begins on CBS.
Oh, wow.
The first hard disk is invented by IBM. Rocky Marciano retires as the only undefeated heavyweight champion ever. The epic film, The Ten Commandments, premieres across the country. And the Alabama bus segregation laws are declared illegal by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Nice.
And the big one here, Grace Kelly marries Prince Rainier in 1956.
Aw.
So there you go, a little pop culture in 1956. There you go. That's from the Ed Sullivan Show in 1956. Elvis doing Ready Teddy and getting the crowd all stirred up. You know, by now, rock and roll is mainstream in America, and it's going across the pond now and everywhere else. People are just going crazy. And in 1956, before Elvis really hit it big, a couple popular people were like Dean Martin, Perry Como, Ella Fitzgerald. They were all kind of the pop scene at that time. And even Frank was still doing stuff. But then once Elvis hit, Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee, and the gang, they all just kind of followed right in there behind him.
Exactly. They filled in the gaps. Yep.
And then they started going on Ed Sullivan and Milton Berle and stuff like that. But once again, the slogan we always used before anybody did anything, Elvis did everything. He was the first rock and roll artist to appear, I think, on national TV scene like he did. So once again, it's 1956, and you shared earlier with us a couple things that were going on for Elvis. So continue, baby. Tell us some more. What was Elvis doing in 1956?
All right. So we left off in February. So from February 5th all the way to the 24th, Elvis was touring the East Coast in Florida. So many, many weeks. And that was probably the interview we just heard on the radio station, because he said, I've been down here for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And he thanked them for supporting him. And to this day, Florida and the East Coast are huge into Elvis.
Right.
Yeah. And then March 31st, the album Elvis Presley enters Billboard at number 11.
All right.
With excess sales of 100,000.
Wow.
So I guess that was more than what they had expected initially.
Sure.
April 3rd, Elvis appears on the Milton Berle Show. April 6th, Elvis signs a 7-year contract with Hal Wallace and Paramount. Yeah, so that starts Elvis's, I don't know if you want to call it rise or downfall for the movie industry.
The first four were the rise.
They got him a little bit there, and then it was all downhill after that. April 7th, Heartbreak Hotel is awarded the Triple Crown Award.
Wow, that was a big one for him.
Yes. April 14th, Billboard awards Elvis with the gold disc for selling 1 million copies of Heartbreak Hotel.
Great.
So it kind of sounds like if you go over these first, 5 months here, 4 or 5 months of 1956, the Heartbreak Hotel is really the big one.
Yeah, it is. It was the skyrocketing song. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it wasn't his biggest hit of the year.
No.
That's coming up later, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. You know what it is too, don't you? Okay, well, don't say. Don't be cruel and let everybody know too early. We don't want anyone to know that.
Okay.
Hey TL, I think Elvis fans are starting to catch on to Blue Suede Connection.
What's not to love, Daniel? 2 hours of great Elvis music, lots of fun. It's our own private party.
And we want everybody to be part of the party. Hear all the hits, rare cuts, and lots of surprises too.
We are your Blue Suede Connection.
Thanks for watching.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
And hit that notification bell.
We are your Blue Suede Connection.